The following is a Furnished Brothers production. Introducing your host, Rob.
Put your best players out there, Mike.
And Ryan.
He missed the net, and it somehow went in.
This is the Talking Buds podcast.
Welcome to the final Talkin' Buds podcast of the 2018-19 season. Rye, it's been just about a week since the devastating Game 7 loss to the Boston Bruins. We decided to wait to do our end of the year show, let the dust settle, let some things blow over. And I'm kind of happy we did that. Before we keep going, how are you feeling a week after the fact?
I'm over it. I think I'm over it at this point. You come to terms with all the things that went wrong, and there's just a lot of things they need to improve on, and we've talked about it all year, all throughout this season on this podcast, all the things they need to work on. And after the emotion is gone and you just think about it, it's just... I'm over it because I understand why they couldn't make it through and why even if they did make it through, they probably wouldn't win a Stanley Cup. So I'm kind of looking forward to the off season, what they do. They have a lot of stuff to figure out. So I'm just gearing myself up for that.
And that right there is exactly why I'm happy that we waited, because I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on this past season. I want to focus on what's ahead and what's to come. So off the top of the show here, let's just take 5 minutes, talk about the season that was, and we're going to switch it up. We're going to do bum and beauty off the top. We're going to name the bum of the season and the beauty of the season. So, Ryan, describe in one word, describe the 2018-19 Toronto Maple Leafs to me.
Predictable.
Oh, that wasn't the word I was going to choose.
Yeah,
I was going to go with disappointing.
Yeah, disappointing, yeah, but I think it's predictable. Like, all year we knew they were playing Boston, and about halfway through the season when we for sure knew we were playing Boston, we all picked Boston to win the series. So, at the end of the day, I found it very predictable.
And I'm going to say disappointing because it's not all doom and gloom. Mitch Marner had a career season. John Tavares had a career season. Austin Matthews' numbers were right around where they should be with his past seasons. Freddie Anderson was in the Vezina conversation right up until the end, so it wasn't all bad. But we said, if you go back to episode 1 of Talkin' Buds this year, we said anything less than the second round should be considered a failure. And this season, you're going to hear me reference this probably a lot tonight in this show when talking about the future, but this is the first ending of a season in the Brendan Shanahan, Mike Babcock, Kyle Dubas era that doesn't feel like just part of the process. Like, this feels different. This feels like this team didn't get the job done. This feels like a failure to me.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it, is the whole rebuild Shanna plan. It's all happened. We got our guys. The fact that you get bounced again in the first round and you still have the same controversies you did exactly 365 days ago with the coach and some of the decisions and the defense not being good enough, and just it's kind of back to where it was a year ago. And I know they had a better series against the Bruins, but like it's kind of, we're all back to where we were a year ago.
it was still a failure. It was still a choke job. They had a chance. Game 6 was their opportunity to put that series away, and they didn't do it, and it cost them. And I think that's why we all felt doom and gloom after Game 6, because none of us had a good feeling about going back to Boston for Game 7.
And you know what? We can sit and talk about the positives, like Mitch Marner throughout the regular season and John Tavares throughout the regular season. But a week removed from that Game 7 loss, the one thing that is still fresh with me is I don't care about the regular season. I don't. This is a good enough hockey team. There's enough talent on this team to perform during the regular season. You got a good goaltender. You should be able to be a perennial playoff team in this division and in this Eastern Conference, whether you're a wild card team, whether you're one of the top 3 teams in your division. I just kind of expect now that they're going to make the playoffs. It only being a week out, I'm still kind of just hyper focused on what happened in that series. I'm kind of just, you know what, Marner had an unreal year, cool. I don't care right now. John Tavares, unreal year, like, I'm still kind of focused on that playoff series. So even though those guys had great years, I'm kind of in the rear view for me now.
Talk a little bit about Zach Hyman. Admits last week in locker cleanout that he played on a torn ACL. Had
that makes
surgery
no
today.
Sense.
Yeah, he had surgery today, and it's going to be a 6-month recovery. He might miss training camp.
Yeah, is there like a different types of torn ACLs? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but like I've seen dudes go down in every sport with a torn ACL, and they're down. Yeah. Like they're not getting up. Yeah. Like
I guess
this guy's giving it 100 every shift on a torn ACL. Like I just want to know. I'm no medical professional, but I just want to know how he was able to do that, because I've seen guys go down immediately after tearing an ACL.
I don't know the specifics of the severity of the injury, but it was revealed that it was a torn ACL, and so
wow. That's unbelievable.
I
can't believe
warrior.
Yeah, I can't believe he was still able to be one of the fastest skaters on the ice with that. Like what? Like I don't get that.
All right, and with that, we're gonna, like I said earlier, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit here. We're gonna do bum and beauty of the season right here, right now. Hit the intro music.
It's time to find out who's a bum and who's a beauty. Take it away, buds.
That's right, Ryan. Bum and beauty of the season. I have a feeling we will have similar choices for bum of the season. But let's start with beauty. I will go first, and I will piggyback off what we just talked about. I'm going to say Zach Hyman is my beauty of the season. We talked all year about how this guy just got chirped for 2 straight seasons playing on Matthews' line. You and I were part of it. We disagreed with his position on that line, or him being put in that situation. And this year he stepped up. He was a key part of the Leafs top line. He was somebody who brought an element of physicality and grit to a team that really lacked that all season. And then he goes into the playoffs, frickin' tears his ACL, and is still going out there. At one point he looked at Mike Babcock and said, "I think I'm getting better," which is hilarious.
Yeah, wow.
So Zach Hyman gets my beauty of the season.
Yeah, that's it. Obviously, there's the obvious choices, the Marners, the Tavareses, the Andersons, but I'm going to go with my beauty of the season, and probably the guy I picked the most as a beauty of the week is Morgan Rielly.
Yep.
I just said, I'm kind of going back on what I just said, but I said I didn't really care about the regular season, but I just think what he did offensively during the year was just one of the biggest improvements I've seen out of a player who's been in the league like a while. Like, it's not like he just is his second or third year. Like, he's always had offensive promise. We never really saw it. And this year, it was his time. And I was just totally astounded by the amount of offensive production he put up during the regular season and the amount of minutes he had to play, and just his leadership in general. So Morgan Rielly is my beauty of the season.
All right, so now it's time for bum of the season, and let's just get out of the way. Which one of us is going to take Patrick Marleau?
Well, I'm taking William Nylander.
Okay, so I will take Patrick Marleau. What is left to say? I mean, we're going to talk about him when we start going through the roster, but to be on the contract that he's on and to play the way he played all year and just not able to produce and just look like he's washed, and that it's the game and the speed of the game's caught up with him. And again, probably the greatest guy you'll ever meet. Anyone who knows him vouches for that. All the guys love him, but he just makes too much money. In an ideal world, I'd love to have Patrick Marleau at like $2.5, $3 million playing on the fourth line, being a mentor to the young guys, but that's not reality. That cap hit is too high, and it just wasn't good enough this year. So Patrick Marleau is my bum of the season.
Yes, Patrick Marleau, tough season, but let me get started on the bum of the year. Without a doubt, unanimous from start to finish, William Bill Nylander. Wow, man. Like, from day one, this guy has been maybe the hottest topic for this hockey team since day one of the season. Holds out for a contract. Finally gets his contract. He got overpaid. And then he comes back, and guess what? He sucked all season, did nothing. Horrible pace on points for the amount of games he played. No offensive production. We already know what he gives you defensively. That's nothing. You know what he gives you physically. It's nothing. And his effort most of the night is pathetic. And then you go to the playoffs. He has that one big goal in game one. Kind of gets put in a tough spot with Kadri getting suspended, going to center with two of those wingers. But, man, just all year, like, what positive did you have for William Nylander this season? Like, at least for Patty Marleau, you could be like, oh, the guys love him. He's a beauty. I can't think of one positive that William Nylander brought to this season.
I said it last episode. I couldn't. I was trying to remember his positive moments in the season, and other than scoring a big goal in Montreal on like a Saturday night game on Hockey Night in Canada, that was really it. And he got the goal in Game 1 against the Bruins.
Yeah, to me, that was his biggest moment of the year. And Kadri set him up with a beauty pass. It wasn't like he created it by himself. He just sprung free, and for once, the stretch pass actually worked. Maybe that should be my second bum of the year, the stretch pass. But it just... William Nylander, I just... Dude, it's been negative all year, so he has to be my bum of the year. Has to be.
All right, well, there you have it. So let's move into like looking ahead to the future. I've got a bunch of things down here, a bunch of topics that I'm going to run through with you with respect to the roster, and then we're going to save the main event for last. So let's start with the biggest storyline going into the offseason, the most important storyline in the offseason. Ryan, Mitch Marner currently does not have a contract. The Maple Leafs will have to get him signed, and will have to do so without further crippling themselves in the salary cap. There's been a lot of talk the last few days. The offer sheet talk has returned. I don't know whether to buy an offer sheet or not. I think if you're going to give someone an offer sheet, the price of the 4 first-round picks is just like ridiculously high. I don't care who the player is. But maybe if a team wanted to mess with Kyle Dubas and the Leafs management team, they would toss Marner an offer sheet.
And then they would have to match and pay probably even more than they were going to pay on an extension that they would have negotiated themselves.
In an ideal scenario, you want to get Marner in at like $10 million. That's what I think. And I think if you're... Obviously, they're going to go in Marner's group and ask for the Matthews deal. And they're going to make a argument as to why he should be paid less than Austin Matthews, given the production and all that sort of thing. But... just the reality is centermen and scoring centermen at that and franchise centermen at that they're the premium of the NHL. They're the unicorns. They're the ones who are going to get paid all the money. And so if you're Kyle Dubas, you're arguing back that Mitch is a winger. You're going to use the fact that he wasn't as effective in games 2 through 7 of the playoff series against Boston, and you want to get him in at $10 million. I just think that if you're going to have 3 guys making $11 million, then that's going to be awfully hard to manage that and sign other guys and improve your team from a cap perspective. Your thoughts?
What has Kyle Dubas taught us this year? That he is willing to just get spanked in negotiation. This guy is not winning any negotiation. That is one thing I can guarantee. Mitch Marner is going to get probably the same or extremely close to Auston Matthews, John Tavares money. You know why? Because Kyle Dubas cannot negotiate. He overpaid William Nylander. He got Auston Matthews at, you know what, it's a pretty rich deal he got Matthews at, but only at 5 years. Like, Kyle Dubas has shown absolutely nothing when it comes to negotiating a contract that is friendly towards the hockey team. Like, their situation that they're going to be in after this offseason with those 3 guys, like, it's scary, man. Like, look at any other there's no other hockey team that's paying 3 guys $11 million. And you look at all the teams left in the playoffs right now, no one is making over $10 million on any of those hockey teams. And I know this playoff is kind of a unique one and one we haven't seen in a while in terms of the teams still in it and where they seeded and everything. But I just have no faith that Kyle Dubas is going to negotiate and play hardball for a team-friendly, like Mitch Marner's not taking a hometown discount, but he's not playing hardball to make sure he gets him in at a certain number. He proved that when he gave William Nylander $7 million, which was a joke.
And gave Auston Matthews a 5-year deal.
Yeah, and you know what? Auston Matthews, you were kind of in a tough bind with Auston Matthews. Like that one I'll give him because what you just said, like a scoring top centerman, those are really hard to come by, and every single hockey team is looking for them. So you kind of had to give Auston Matthews what he wanted. But
to your point about Dubas negotiating, so I've got my list of points here, and I'm going to jump down like 3 or 4 because it's relevant to the conversation we're having. Darren Dreger reported today that they've been in talks with Andreas Johnsson and his camp, and saying that Johnsson is looking for a $3 million per year deal. The Leafs have offered $2.1 million for 2 years and $2.6 for 4, and Johnsson's camp said no to both of those. So that contract that they're offering, in my opinion, is more than fair for a guy like Andreas Johnsson. Has shown flashes at times, but still has a long way to go to be considered elite. The talent is there, but he's still got to prove it, in my opinion.
Well, even $3 million, like that's like there's not a lot of unreal hockey players making $3 million. Like, it's
to your point though, Ryan. Even Andreas Johnsson and his camp are so confident in that they can take Kyle Dubas for a ride that they're playing hardball.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone has had a chance to catch Brian Burke on Hockey Central or see him on any of the Sportsnet broadcasts. And me personally, I'm not the biggest Brian Burke fan on planet Earth. He may deliver lines in a funny way, but he's run some hockey teams in some silly ways. But he said it best. Like, he opened up the floodgates as soon as he offered William Nylander $7 million after a long negotiation. And I completely agree with that. Now, these agents, they can just play hardball with Dubas. And guess what? The past shows that this guy is willing to bend and give your client what he wants, the player what he wants. So I honestly, Kyle Dubas has a lot to prove to me when it comes to negotiating contracts and being tough and making sure he doesn't overpay, because so far he's kind of overpaid all the time. And I know he's still a young guy, but
Johnsson has arb rights. So if they can't come to a deal, they're going to arbitration. And so if the arbiter says $3 million for this guy, then the Leafs have to pay it or trade his rights. So here's the thing. Like, if they blow the doors off with Marner, this is why it's so important. And I heard Chris Johnson say the other day that he thinks the pitch to Marner will be like they're gonna meet with Marner in his camp, and it's gonna be this elaborate presentation about how like we need to sign you at this number because then after that we need the money to do X, Y, and Z, and if you're in too high, then we can't win a cup. So it's like sort of pandering.
It's too late for that. It's too late. You shouldn't have signed John Tavares then.
Yeah.
Like, to me, if that's your pitch, you should have let Johnny T sign with another hockey team. As soon as you signed John Tavares to an $11.5 million contract, that put you in a serious situation with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, and especially after the year Mitch Marner had. And going back to the season, he proved that he was the absolute engine for the team, was providing offense every single night, made John Tavares have a career year. So as soon as you inked that contract with Johnny T, and as soon as you inked that contract with William Nylander at $7 million, like, you're putting yourself in a serious situation. And why should Mitch Marner take any less than those guys? Because we talked about it all year. Like, what's the okay, cool argument. So what? Like, doesn't mean I'm taking it. Like, I'm here for me. I'm here to make my money and make my brand. Like, I don't care about your cup-winning team. Figure it out. Like, I just, dude, they're going to be in a like, this rebuild has come, like, it's ended real quick. So and the Shanna plans ended real quick.
So like, what do you think, switching over to Kapanen and Johnsson, who are RFAs and also need new contracts, where are you at with them? Like, are you looking to move one of or both of those guys? Like, I think Kapanen doesn't have our arbitration rights, so you can play, like, you can be a little, play more hardball with him. But Johnsson, it's like, what do you do? Like, do you just look to move his rights?
If you look at the statistics, basically what Andreas Johnsson is what Connor Brown was 2 or 3 years ago when he got 20 goals that season. And then he signed for $2.5 million, given Connor Brown's a Toronto kid and probably just wanted to play for the Maple Leafs. So probably could have got higher somewhere else after a 20-goal season, but decided to stick around. Me personally, I would not be sad in the slightest if Andreas Johnsson and Kasperi Kapanen were wearing another uniform next year.
Interesting.
Like,
there's a lot of people who would disagree with you on that.
Oh, cool. Like, I just, you know what? Like, it be careful. Don't get too attached to these guys. Like, I've seen teams in the past have somewhat success. You get too attached to the players on the team, and what ends up happening is it becomes a dumpster fire a couple of years later.
Well, no, listen, I agree with you. I'm of the opinion that based on how this was an ugly ending to this season. This wasn't a nice ending. You're not ending the season on a positive note, and this is like another reason why I think they need to try and work something out with Marner that's team friendly, is because they got to switch out some of the parts on this team. You can't trot this same group of guys out here that, like, top to bottom, like, your core star players are intact, but you can't trot the same roster out next year and expect people to buy in. Like, there has to be some change made here. Like, there has to be, just based on the way this season ended. You can't just come back with it. So if you got to move on from a Kapanen or a Johnsson, you need to use those two guys to get some help on your blue line and knock yourself out.
Exactly.
Like, 100%. Like, knock yourself out. Go for it.
They've got themselves, like we just said, they've got themselves in such a bind with these 3 contracts with when Marner's going to sign that it's kind of like you can't get attached to these guys anymore because there's no room. If a guy has a couple good years on his entry level and is demanding any sort of money, like it doesn't matter if it's $3 million. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have 3 guys at $33 million of your cap taken up, it is a lot. And you got Morgan Rielly and you got all these other guys. To me, just I don't. You got your 3 guys in place, and now everyone else is interchangeable. Actually, no, throw Morgan Rielly in there. You got your 4 guys in place, and everyone else can either stay or go. Look at the Chicago Blackhawks, man. Like, how many wingers have gone in and out of that franchise for the past 10 years? Like,
and Pittsburgh.
It's just exactly Pittsburgh. There's always a bunch of nobodies on Crosby's wing or Malkin's wing. There are guys coming up from the A. Like, you can't, when you have this predicament in your salary cap, you cannot get attached to these guys. And Andreas Johnsson and Kasperi Kapanen, I like watching them play hockey. They're skilled guys. They're fast. They can help your hockey team. To me, they're the exact same hockey player. So you pick one or the other.
Yep.
Because you can get some. I think you should trade Kapanen because you can get more for Kapanen. Mm-hmm. But I'm separating myself from being too attached to players I've watched all season or last season. Like, it's time to face the reality. You're in a cap crunch. People are going to be in and out.
You still need to find ways to change some of these parts while you're in said cap crunch. Like, you need to improve your blue line. If you want to come back next year and have a chance to be better than you were this year, your blue line's got to get better.
100%.
So you need to look at what assets you have.
Yeah. And you know what? Turn all your focus to getting another blue liner. You know what? If you're going to spend, I'd rather you take the $3 million a piece for Kapanen and Johnsson and use it for $6 million on a good defenseman, personally, because that blue line is just whoa, like wow. Well, Callie Rosen's coming though. It's like this blue line. Like, if they want to go anywhere with this Brendan Shanahan era, Mike Babcock era, Kyle Dubas era, they need to add another defenseman or 4. Like, I get all the skill and scoring, but your 3 top dogs should be able to provide offense for you. Plus Nazem Kadri. You still have a top 3 center. Your top 3 centers are still elite in this league. So to me,
Ryan,
you work off that.
Let's I'm going to cut you off right there because a huge topic of discussion since the season has ended, and you just transitioned beautifully for me. Do you think Nazem Kadri will be a Maple Leaf next season?
100%.
I'm with you on that.
I'll go 100%.
There's been speculation that management is not the happiest with Nazem because he once again took himself. Do you believe if Nazem Kadri didn't get suspended, the Leafs win the series against the Bruins?
No.
No, interesting. I think they have a better shot. I think that I disagree with you a little bit on that. I think they have a better shot. They might still lose, but I think they have a better chance of winning Game 6 if he's in the lineup and you don't have Nylander centering that third line. That's my opinion.
Kadri just wasn't that good this year.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Nazem Kadri, and this is why I think he's not going anywhere. We've just spent the last 10 minutes talking about the Leafs cap crunch. Nazem Kadri still makes you have the best center depth in the league, and he's on an unreal deal with a $4 million cap hit. So when you're a team that has salary cap issues, that's the type of contract that you're looking for, and he's got it. So I don't think Nazem's going anywhere.
And I think the coach loves him, and I think you know what? They may not be happy the way he got suspended, but like, what are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna you need that. The one thing to me, wingers can go in and out. You can find any winger and put him on a good line with a good center. To me, if you're gonna keep some guys around, keep your centers around. Don't worry about these fast wingers who impress you with their speed through the neutrals. Like, you can find wingers. This is another thing they need to focus on too.
Wouldn't this be what you would say if you were across the table negotiating with Mitch Marner?
Yeah, but Mitch Marner's different though. Marner had 94 points, and if
you're across the table trying to get him if you're negotiating with him, that's your argument. The position he plays.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
I don't think they're going to win that battle with him, though.
No, I don't think so either.
Like, they could win that battle with Andreas Johnsson, but I don't think they're going to win that battle with Mitch Marner because it's like, okay, get rid of Mitch Marner, see what happens. Like, okay, like, we all know how important he is to this hockey team.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm just saying, I just don't want people to get so upset because Kasperi Kapanen's not around. It's like, okay, he's a nice player.
People get emotionally attached to these guys. Yeah. One person who I don't think anyone has any more emotional attachment to, who I think has played his last game as a Toronto Maple Leaf, is Jake Gardiner. Gardiner got emotional on locker clean-out day, just finally acknowledging the fact that he likely won't be back, even if they wanted to have him back. Again, to reference Brian Burke, he said that he thinks Gardiner needs a new start and a new area code. I agree with that too. even if the Leafs wanted to have him back, he'll be too expensive for them. So he's going to move on. Ryan, how will you remember Jake Gardiner as a Toronto Maple Leaf?
Oh, that's a tough question, man. I don't even have a quick answer for you.
A guy
Jake
who had
Gardiner
tons,
as a Maple Leaf.
a guy who had tons of skill, tons of offensive upside, but just could never really put it all together.
You know what he is? He's just another Toronto Maple Leaf defenseman who was run out of town because of his inconsistent play and his like you always wanted more watching Jake play. Like he's not a horrible defenseman. He's a good defenseman. But when you're put in a position to play a top 4 role and you went to sleep as much as he did sometimes, like people aren't gonna like you. And and when the games, his worst games of his career were all big hockey games, you know? Like,
Yep.
he could show up on a Tuesday night against the Hurricanes at the Scotiabank in January, but Game 7s, playoff games, the giveaways, the just everything combined. It's just, Jake had a rough go here. The word you think of is just polarizing. I think now that he's left, I think it's like an 80-20 hatred. Like 80% hate him, 20% like him. Like everyone I talk to, Leaf fans, ask him about Jake Gardiner, they all hate him. Like they're all dying to see him go.
Yeah, that's why I think
and happy that
he
he's
needs
gone.
a fresh start. He needs a fresh start someplace else, for sure. The
Yeah.
fan
Oh,
base
yeah.
is tired of it, and I don't know if it's starting to get in his head or what, but yeah, he definitely needs a fresh start someplace else. Sticking
Yeah.
with the blue line, Ryan, if you could get him on a team-friendly contract, would you bring Ron Hainsey back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so would I.
Dude, they're thin back there, and I know Jake. You can't afford Jake, and you're kind of sick of him. So when even though he's okay, you're like, oh, whatever. Jake's leaving. It's nice to kind of get a fresh face in there. But dude, their defense is like pretty thin back there. Like I don't think you could be relying on these Liljegren's and Sandins.
Well, apparently they love Sandin. Apparently Sandin is like, he's considered the top number 1 prospect in the organization.
Yeah, and that's nice. Like I'm shy. I don't watch a lot of Marley's games or junior hockey games, but to me it's tough to come up and make an impact as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old in this league, unless you're like a star, like a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be relying on these guys next year to come in and fill some sort of top 4 role. The guy who's got to step up next year is Travis Dermott.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's taken the biggest leap. Like, he's got a full year under his belt, and now he's going to be relied upon heavily. And they got Muzzin coming back, so that's good. They got Zaitsev still. But now you're looking at like the Callie Rosens of the world, and it's like you can listen to Sportsnet, you can listen to 590, all these guys talking about Callie Rosen. They like the way he's playing in the AHL, but to me that just means nothing. Like, let's see this guy come up and actually play a string of games in this league, because I guarantee you, half a season in, a lot of Leaf fans are being like, this guy stinks. So let's hold our breath on the Callie Rosens of the world. They're going to have to go out and get another guy. Like, they have to.
All right, last thing on the roster. We've got all off season to talk about what we want to see from Matthews next year and all that sort of thing, and Tavares and all the core guys, Freddie, Riley, all that. So we'll save discussion on those players for another time. But the last thing on the roster I want to discuss, Patrick Marleau. I think it is absolutely imperative that Kyle Dubas do everything he possibly can to either trade Patrick Marleau or, the least likely of the two, convince him to retire, which I don't think is going to happen. So they are going to have to find a way to trade Patrick Marleau. And let me just say, this is not fair to Patrick Marleau. It's not his fault that Lou Lamoriello signed him to that contract. It's not his fault, but the Leafs are in a situation, as we've said hundreds of times with their cap, that you can't be playing this player that money for that amount of production and for the role he plays on the team, despite how much the head coach wants to force him into a top 6 role. He's not a top 6 player. And Ryan, I think, in my personal opinion, Ryan, I think getting Marner done is priority number 1 for Kyle Dubas, and then figuring out what you're going to do with Patrick Marleau is priority number 2. That's my pecking order of important things to do this offseason.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but I think the only positive that comes out of Marleau is at least he's got 1 more year left. Like, if he had, 4 more years, he'd be like, oh my, what are we going to do with this? And I know you want to have success. Like, they don't have time to be waiting, it's 3 first-round exits. It's time to get going. You need to win a round. You need to make a run. Everyone's getting a little bit older. Everyone's starting to make more money. But at least it's not like a Zaitsev 4 more years left on the deal. It's 1 more year left. If you got to live with them for 1 more year, so be it. That just means they have more cap room going in the next season. But we don't have the patience to be waiting a whole nother season with this guy around, and he's watching him play. He's brutal. So I honestly, I am not even intelligent, smart enough to know how to handle that situation, how to get under that situation, because I know he's got, maybe a team will be like, you know what, I like Patrick Marleau, I'll take him on the 1 year, 6.5. We got some cap room. It's whatever. But if other general managers and NHL scouts are watching Patrick Marleau play, I'm pretty sure they'd be advising their general manager to be like, yeah, let's not do that. So it's going to be a tough contract to get out from under this year.
Do you think the Maple Leafs will name a captain this offseason? And if so, who?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I like to think yes, and I think it's going to be Austin Matthews.
I agree with you.
Both. Just because it's Austin Matthews, and I think he kind of proved it in the first round that he should be the captain and
that he wants it.
He is the best player on the team, and he is the biggest game changer when it really comes down to it, when he's really playing his game, as much as we love Mitch Marner. But, yeah, I could see them just cheaping out and not naming one. It wouldn't shock me.
No,
if they didn't name
enough's
one.
enough with this. This is what I'm talking about. Enough's enough with this crap. This has been 3 years of this now, 4 years of it now. Enough's enough. It's time to change the narrative of this team a little bit. This little cutesy, we're a bunch of kids, we don't have a captain yet, is over. All right, you guys, you blew it this year, and you got to turn a corner. And so, I'm going to quote Chris Johnson again because he's by far my favorite Leaf insider. It's not even close. The organization changed the day Austin Matthews was drafted first overall. Put the C on him. I know you and I both at times this year were saying Riley. I think Riley would also be a good choice, but I just think realistically, Austin Matthews is the guy, and enough is enough.
And his entry level's over. It's not like you handed some kid some captain that he didn't deserve.
Exactly.
He's a little snot-nosed kid who's spoiled first overall pick. The guy's done his 3 years. He's had a good 3 years statistically. He can score the lights out. Finally showed up in a big series. And I think it's just time to stop trying to... we want to avoid the whole Toronto drama narrative by naming it. It's just name that. Who cares? Why is so much thought being put into this? What is the big deal? Just put the C on the guy. Really, at the end of the day, what does a captain do? It's the Mark Messier days are over. It's the guy's just wearing the C because he's your franchise player, not because he has to be the most incredible leader and be a guy who sparks the locker room. No, he's the best player on the team, and he's got the ability to change a hockey game with one wrist shot. So put the C on him. Let's stop this stupid talk. I'm sick of this. we'll spend another weeks talking about this. Like, let's just name the captain, please.
Ryan, it is time for the main event of the evening. The number one topic that I've wanted to discuss since last Thursday's locker cleanout is finally upon us. Without a doubt, the biggest talking point of contention, whatever you want to call it, since the Game 7 loss to Boston has been Mike Babcock and his deployment of the roster, distribution of ice time, and his comments after the game about how he felt like Patrick Marleau should be out there, and then getting up and storming out after being asked that question, like, how dare you have the audacity to ask me that question. Then on locker cleanout day, the man did himself no favors and once again proved that he is one of the more arrogant egomaniacs on planet Earth, when he basically, you know what I learned about him, Ryan? He believes what he did and how he coached was right. And if we were back here all over again, Patrick Marleau would be out there again in the final few minutes of the game. He did himself no favors. He took zero responsibility. He took nothing on his shoulders. He didn't say one thing where he felt he could have improved. He once again criticized the depth of the roster. Then his boss, Kyle Dubas, comes out, takes everything on the chin, took the Nylander contract situation on the chin, took the Leafs penalty kill being bad on the chin and their power play being bad on the chin. I don't understand how he's taken that on the chin, but whatever, he did anyway. And then so here's the thing, okay? I think we can all agree, and I think it's been proven, that Mike Babcock and Kyle Dubas are not on the same page. They see the game differently. They believe in different philosophies when it comes to what makes a winning hockey team. But the one thing that Mike Babcock and Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan all have in common is they're not dummies, and they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. And you'd have to have been like living under a rock to not be aware of the criticism that was being thrown at Mike Babcock for the way he coached in the series, and specifically Game 7. So you'd think that Kyle Dubas would come out, and even if there is some discussion going on behind closed doors about Babcock's future, in public and to the media, he's going to put ice on that fire, and he's going to say, he's our coach. This speculation's not going anywhere. The speculation is ridiculous. He's not going anywhere, etc., etc. Ryan, he did not say that. When he was asked about if Mike Babcock will definitely be on the team next year, he said, I think the way I look at this is that Shanny has to decide on me first and do an evaluation of me, which I think any organization would be best to do. Once that is done, we evaluate everybody. And he goes on to say more about we could win the Stanley Cup and it would be the same process, yada, yada, yada. But all he had to do there was say, no, Mike's our coach. His track record speaks for himself, blah, 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 blah. And then even if you do make a decision behind closed doors, at least in the media, you're trying to put that fire out. And since then, the criticism of Babcock, the noise is only being turned up. The pressure and the heat is only being turned up. And Dubas still, or Shanny too, still have yet to come out and give a public endorsement of their head coach going into next season. Ryan, this is a fascinating situation. And one of the bigger storylines heading into the offseason is the future of Mike Babcock. Your thoughts?
First of all, Mike Babcock's ego is out of control. It is out of control.
Yep.
Like, whoa.
He thinks he's Bill Belichick.
He does. He thinks he's Bill Belichick, and as someone who's a diehard Patriots fan and has watched every Super Bowl since Tom Brady's donned the sweater in every playoff game and all the different pieces that Bill Belichick's handled on his team and how he makes duds into superstars. Mike, you've won one cup, buddy. Like, let's not... I get it. I know everyone's quick to call him one of the best coaches in the world.
Haven't been out of the first round in years.
You know what the Olympic gold medals mean to me in terms of coaching? Nothing. I don't count those towards being a good coach. You had the greatest roster ever assembled.
Oh yeah,
for
the 2014 Olympics. The 2014 Sochi team was like the greatest hockey team ever assembled.
Like, I'm sorry, I don't count that towards your coaching record. It was a great accomplishment. I'm happy for you. At the end of your career, you've won 2 gold medals for your country. You can be proud of that. But when it comes to the National Hockey League, this guy has won 1 Stanley Cup. That is it. And at the end of the day, no matter how many minutes he played Austin Matthews or Patrick Marleau, he's been bounced 3 years in a row in the first round. And I'm pretty sure if you go back in his career, it's been more than that, being bounced out of the first round. This guy, he may be smart. He'll get your team to the playoffs. But when it's crunch time, his ego is going to take over. Chances are it's probably going to hurt you. So I was kind of defensive of him after Game 7 because I thought it was kind of on the players a little bit. But, dude, after hearing that press conference, like, the guy is out of control. And all this is going to end up in one way. Just how it ends up with every hockey team. The coach is going to get fired at some point. And I don't care if you're Mike Babcock, Joel Quenneville, heck, bring Scotty Bowman out of retirement. The coach is going to get fired at some point. And I see him one more year if they don't win a Stanley Cup, or if they don't make it to a conference final, or even win a round, they get bounced in the first round again. See you later, Mike. And
I'm with you. I don't think it's going to happen, but I've changed my stance in that. Like last week, I said it's not going to happen, and it is what it is, and I'm not going to think about it too much because there's no change in the fact. But the comments made by Kyle Dubas combined with the fact that no one's come out and publicly endorsed Babcock has me thinking that maybe this is more of a real possibility than we think it is. And if I can be completely honest with you, Ryan, I'd like to see it happen. I think you said it right off the top of the show. 1 year later, we are still in a situation where our coach got out-coached by Bruce Cassidy. He didn't play our star player enough, and he's shoving the washed old veterans out there because Mike's still coaching like it's 1997. And I've had enough. Like, listen, taking all the emotion out of it, I've been waiting all week to say this. I'm going to put Mike Babcock in the same sort of place that I put Lou Lamoriello. Bringing Mike Babcock in here when he came in was a good thing for this organization. This organization was, for lack of a better term, a shit show before he got here, okay? The days of Phil Kessel going off the ice to pay for the food while Peter Horachek is running practice were over the day Mike Babcock showed up. He brought stability and discipline and being prepared and all those things to this team. And he should be commended for that. And he's taken this team to consecutive 100-point seasons. Again, just, it was necessary. However, his ego has gotten too big. It's almost like he's lost perspective and has become delusional. His ego's gotten too big. And I genuinely believe in my heart he doesn't know how to relate to, understand, and deploy the young players. He just doesn't get it. And because his ego is so massive, he's so set in his ways that it's not going to be something that he's going to be able to correct. I just don't believe that it's something that he's going to be able to correct. So I think bringing Mike Babcock back for one more season just keeps your organization in the same complacent place. And this team is not going to take the next step, and this group of players are not going to be pushed and lifted up to the next level as long as he's behind the bench. I truly believe that, and I think the time has come now to make the coaching change. Now, his detractors say, they bring up the 100-point seasons and they say, well, who are you going to get to replace him? Which is a good question. Obviously, we all lean towards Sheldon Keefe because that's
this
Dubas'
is a
guy.
whole separate argument for me. It's the Mike Babcock thing, and then there's that. To me, everything you just laid out, Mike Babcock's not a bad coach. And what you brought up with the whole Peter Horacek and the way this franchise operated before he got here, it's an unbelievable point. Like, it's so true. And you know what? Babcock's perfect for that. But he's a guy, he'll get you in the playoffs. He's a good coach. He'll get you in the playoffs. But when it comes down to crunch time, all he's proven so far is that you're angry at him once it's over, because there's a lot of decisions he's made that have you scratching your head. And it's just because of his own ego. For no other reason. I don't care. Don't give me the amount of shot attempts that Marleau had at the net. Come on, man. Open your eyes. Like, you know. I don't know.
It's like there's something in his brain. There's like a wire crossed in his brain that he can't figure out putting these young guys in those situations. He just looks at the bench and he sees Marleau and he sees Hainsey and he's like, you two, you're my guys. And Johnny, and like,
I just, if I was a media member, I know you would get fired immediately and never let back into the Scotiabank Arena again. But if he said that to me, and if I was a reporter, I'd just look back at him and be like, why are you lying right now? Like, what? Like,
but Ryan, that's the thing.
Like,
Ryan, that's the thing, and this is why I think it's
like,
time to remove him.
Why are you being stupid?
But
like,
that's the thing, Ryan. He's not lying. He's not lying. He genuinely believes in his head and in his heart that he's doing the right thing, and we're all idiots. Like, that's the thing about Babs. Like, and that's why I said, like, he's borderline delusional. Like, there's no lying. Like, there's no, like, he's in denial. Like, nothing. Like, we could play Game 7 over again tonight against the Boston Bruins, and the same situation could be happening, and in the final 6 minutes, Patrick Marleau would be on the ice every other shift. That's just the way he operates. And that's why I think this team is built through their young, speed, skill, analytical thinking type. That's the way they're built. And you need a coach who understands Kyle Dubas's, like, vision better than Mike Babcock does. And that's why I think the time has come. I don't know if they're waiting to see what happens with the Marlies. I don't know, like, whatever. I don't know if they're embarrassed to, like, they made such a show of bringing Babcock in here, and now they're just going to fire him and shove him out the door. I don't know what it is, but something's got to be done, and I don't believe it. I just don't believe that this team can go to the next level with him behind the bench. He's proven it now 3 years in a row.
Well, I think if it was up to Brendan Shanahan, Mike Babcock would be around for another year at least. But if you think that Brendan Shanahan has given Kyle Dubas full power and the buck stops at Kyle Dubas, then it's a possibility that he could go, because for all the reasons we just laid out, you know what? The X's and O's of this game are important, but at the end of the day, it's a free-flowing hockey game. We're not drawing up defensive coverages for a hockey game. It's all about how can you get the best out of your team, you know? And I feel like, personally, I've said this so many times, if I was a player on Mike Babcock's hockey team and I played for him for 4 years, I'd probably hate him by now, because he's just such a, like, bleh.
Well,
like,
you
know,
saw,
like
you saw
like,
what makes him unlikable in his end of the
just
season
after
press
a while,
conference.
his whole shtick
he's
is just
so
like, you're
full of
telling
himself.
him sweating during his interviews because he just went for a run, and his stupid drive train and his all stupid quotes. Like, they're very quotable and entertaining, but after a while being in there, spending almost every day with him for most of the year, like, you just be like, dude, like, just quit it, man. Like, just be a normal human being. Like, just he's got such a shtick and an ego that it's just like, after a while you'd be like, all right, Mike. Like, there's been so many interviews of former hockey players that have played for Babcock, and they all can't stand him. There's been a couple of guys who said they loved him. So he's polarizing for the guys who's played for him. But I just, like, the only thing about hiring a new coach is, like, let's not crown Sheldon Keefe as some, like, legend already, you know? Like, you gotta be careful.
And
like,
that's the thing. Like, I don't want it to come off that, like, I'm sitting here being like, Sheldon Keefe. We don't know about Sheldon
exactly,
Keefe, right?
exactly.
Like, we don't. But what I do think I know and truly believe is that Babcock, they're not going to the next level with Mike Babcock. And I don't know, like, maybe they haven't come out and said anything because they are meeting right now and discussing it. Like if you're Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan and you're sitting in a boardroom talking things over with Mike Babcock and he's reiterating to you what he believes, which is that Patty Marleau should have been on the ice in the final 6 minutes of Game 7 and Austin Matthews should not, how do you proceed? You got to take that offline away from Babs and the two of them go and meet in another room and go, what do we do with this?
If Brendan Shanahan's sitting in an office with Kyle Dubas and he looks at him and goes, Kyle, I didn't hire Mark Hunter. I didn't bring back Lou. I promised you this job. I gave you this job. And the reason why I gave you this job is to run the team the way you see fit because I believe in you. And if he gives him the power to make that decision of firing Mike Babcock, even though Shanny was the one who technically brought him in, you got to look at Kyle Dubas and ask him, is this guy, like, impeding you from the success you feel like you could have with this hockey team?
I believe
if the answer is yes, then you fire him.
Well,
then you get rid of him.
I think we need to start looking at Mike Babcock the way now we all look at Lou, which is this team was such a dumpster fire that it took those two sort of old school guys to come in and bring stability back to the organization. And now that you have stability back in the organization, it's back to being respectable, you can move on from these guys. And again, you ideally, you don't want to move on from Babs. We paid him all this money. There's so much hype around him, but he just proves time and time again that the guy's vision for the game is super dated. The way he like relies on veteran players is super dated. He doesn't. And again, I've said it all year. If Mike Babcock loses his job, based on what I've saw specifically this season, if Mike Babcock loses his job, he wants to be mad at somebody, go look in the mirror, bud. Like, you did this. Oh, I know. And that's why another reason why he just comes off so unlikable, because he's just, depth, and we got to get better, and guys got to go drivetrain, and the way you get depth, and you got to get better players, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, dude, God.
And I don't want us talking about this to come off as like we're Kyle Dubas marks. Kyle Dubas has a lot to answer for himself as well.
Oh,
like,
dude.
I have a lot of questions that I want answered from Kyle Dubas and things he needs to learn and get better at, because I didn't think he had the most sweetheart season as a general manager.
You said
either.
it earlier in the episode. We're not Kyle Dubas marks. You flat out criticized him for getting fleeced on pretty much every contract negotiation he's had so far.
Yeah, and he made the biggest mistake of his general managing career a weekend, saying, are you going to sign all these guys? And he said, quote, we can and we will. Like, that was the dumbest thing he could have said early. Like, that's a huge mistake. I'm sure he's learned from that too. Like, there's being a smart guy, and then there's being arrogant and being the cool guy. Like, you just got to not say things like that. And then there's the whole weird thing with William Nylander being promised not to be traded. Like, that was silly too. And so was that whole contract. So I don't want to come off as like we're Kyle Dubas marks chirping Babcock, but it comes down to this. If your general manager and your coach are not getting along and there's tension, one of them needs to go, and usually it's the coach who goes first. So it's not about who's right, who's wrong.
And let's not forget who Shanny's wagon is hitched to. And yes, he did bring in Babcock, but his wagon is hitched to Kyle Dubas.
And you can't have a rift between your general manager and your coach. That's a nightmare. They may not always agree on things, but I feel like it's a little past the point of just disagreements. Like, now it's like, I want to do this way, you want to do it this way, and I will do everything I can not to do it your way. Like that's kind of what Babcock's saying to Dubas. And Dubas going, I don't care what you think. I'm going to do things my way. So whoever you like more, one of them needs to go. And in hockey and in all of sports, it's always the coach that goes first before the general manager. But keep in mind, once Kyle Dubas fires his first coach, that kind of puts the clock on him too. Like
he's on the clock.
So let's even though I think Brendan Shanahan is with Kyle Dubas for the long run, but it's you don't want to be going through a bunch of you don't want to be the Philadelphia Flyers. Like you don't want to be a team or the Buffalo Sabres. They're just running through head coaches. But it's pretty clear after all this that Mike Babcock is just like how is he going to change? How are things going to get better? Like,
and that's to me why I have no optimism. Like I just don't see a scenario in which we come back next year and he's doing all the things that we want him to do. I think the only way you're going to get him to do that is if you take all his veterans away from him. And what we also learned from Mike Babcock this year is he's not afraid to take a shot at his employer in the media and criticize his team's depth in the media. So, which is another thing. There's like at some point it's just like, Mike, stop.
Yeah. So this is the off-season story for everyone. It's the Marner contract. It's who they got to get rid of to fit under the cap. How they got to make it all work. And then there's the Mike Babcock.
Yep, 100%. And we'll just have to sit back and watch it all unfold. Just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who went on this journey with us this season. We had a blast. Thanks to those of you who sent messages to us on Instagram. We really appreciate it. The plan for the summer is we're not going cold turkey for the summer. We'll be around. We'll do some shows here and there. If any big news breaks, we'll be doing a show ASAP immediately following that. So we'll still be around. We'll still be on social and stuff. And that's the plan for the summer. And Ryan will be right back for training camp in the fall.
Oh yeah, buddy. It's gonna fly by.
Yep.
That's well, you got the draft and you got the July 1, and after July 1 it kind of gets tough, but you never know. Someone can get fired, someone can get traded, someone can get signed, and we'll be right there ready to talk about it as soon as it happens.
Thank you everybody for downloading. We will see you when we see you.